the importance of your microbiome and your joints is way more significant than actually I thought. So it's something we're going to cover when we talk about the food right now. Okay, so we have the 7 foods that you want to avoid. Now, these are not necessarily just foods. They're ingredients in a lot of foods. The first one is emulsifiers. An emulsifier in a food is something that mixes things up in a way that is very blended. And so you'll see these emulsifiers, like one of them is polysorbate 80. Okay, you'll see these in frozen desserts, creamy dressings, and what they do is they really mess up the microbiome. You remember the microbiome that actually helps you make those bile salts that you need for your joints? Well, there's a high correlation between eating these foods and consuming this and having inflammation in the joints. And I wanted to just point that out and make you aware of that. Let's go to number 2, low-fat soy protein powder. If you look at some of these protein bars, sometimes they'll use soy isolate protein. It's very low fat. It's an industrial protein. And I do know a lot of people who use that protein end up with achy joints, arthritis. Why? Well, because it interferes with the liver. When you don't consume animal protein, and you get your protein from things like soy protein or plant-based protein, you're going to get a very low amount of taurine, if any taurine. Taurine is needed to make bile. Okay, so that's one thing that is missing in a vegan diet is taurine. You don't have the primary thing that stimulates the production of bile and the contraction of the gallbladder. You need fat for that. So people on a low-fat diet, they end up with a deficiency of bile, which can then end up with a problem with arthritis. Now, there could also be residues of hexane, which is a solvent in this soy protein. Now, some people will say, oh, it evaporates, it's not there. But there's no one supervising or regulating that right now, unfortunately. But so it may be there, it may not be there, we don't know. And like I said before, we're not going to get the bile stimulation. Instead, we're going to get this thing that's going to create more inflammation in the area of the liver and the digestive tract, which is going to interfere with the microbes. Number 3, refined seed oils. I want to explain something. When they have done studies on seed oils, they have actually said when they replace the saturated fat with these seed oils, there's an improvement in cardiovascular function and insulin sensitivity. And I'm not denying that. My point is, what type of oil did they use? Did they use the typical oil that people get when they go to a fast food restaurant where it's heated and reheated for days or weeks? Absolutely not. So there are seed oils that are cold pressed, very, very minimal refining. And then you have the typical oil, which is refined, bleached, deodorized, heated to 570 degrees. When you heat those oils, you create byproducts called aldehydes, which create a lot of damage in the joint and in the arteries and also in your mitochondria and in the cells that regulate insulin. So yeah, you can hypothetically say that these oils are fine, but what about the complete picture? What about the byproducts that are created from the heat and the reheating as well as the aldehydes that are created once these seed oils are embedded into your membranes. Some of these oils, safflower oil, if it's cold pressed, or even the sunflower oil, has a much lower omega-6 fatty acid and much higher monounsaturated fats, just like avocado oil and olive oil. But that's completely different than what most people consume or buy at the store. So this is why, number 3, refined seed oils are very inflammatory, especially for your joints. Okay, number 4, alcohol, especially beer. So beer will turn into something called purines, which then can create problems with gout, and it can create inflammation in the joint. Beer also has carbohydrates, so it's going to create a spike in blood sugar and create inflammation. And it's not just the beer that will create problems with arthritis, the wine and hard liquor, because it messes with your liver. And anything that destroys the liver will cause arthritis, unfortunately. Number 5, casein A1 protein, okay, A1. A2 is less of a problem, but the commercial milk that they sell with A1 is the one that a lot of people have a problem with, and especially if it's condensed into these two things right here, sodium caseinate and calcium caseinate. These are like super concentrated casein A1 protein that is going to flare up your joints, and it's in a lot of the bars. It's a very cheap protein they use that comes from China. So you have that. You also have a concentrated casein A1 protein in cheese, like the American cheese. So you want to avoid these casein conventional powders that they have. They actually put it in infant formula. Probably why children develop allergies to milk, right? Not good. If you're going to do milk protein, it's the A2. If you do sheep cheese or goat's cheese or even cow's milk cheese, you can actually find it A2. It's much better. But the conventional milk with A1 protein is from grain-fed cows. And if we also compare milk to cheese, like cheese is going to be way more concentrated in that protein, so you'll probably have more reaction to cheese than you would milk. All right, number 6, modern wheat compared to some of the ancient grains. You know, I do a lot of videos on wheat, and yes, it's a refined wheat product that will spike your blood sugars because the carbohydrate in there is a super high glycemic starch called amylopectin A, which not only will spike your blood sugars higher than sugar, it's also highly inflammatory. That's one thing. You also have this WGA, wheat germ agglutinin. That is something that is almost as inflammatory as gluten. It's a type of chemical that attaches to your gut wall and it can create leaky gut. And then we have glyphosate, right? Now, most wheat is not GMO, but they still spray this herbicide, glyphosate, as a drying agent. And you're getting like a lot more of it that way. And if you're exposed to this, not only is this going to affect your microbiome, but it is connected to inflammation. And then we get gluten. Gluten is another protein that humans have a difficult time digesting. The byproducts from gluten can give a opioid-like effect, which kind of numbs the area initially, and then all of a sudden you end up with pain that's delayed. There's just a lot of issues with gluten and arthritis and gluten and inflammation gluten, and thyroid problems. And then, of course, we have high fructose corn syrup. This is not just sugar. This is an industrial type of synthetic sugar that's higher in fructose that has been known to create a lot of inflammation in your liver and insulin resistance in your liver, which is going to create inflammation directly and indirectly. So there's really no turn-off switch. So people can drink a lot of it without kind of being satisfied. So it's very, very dangerous. So these are the foods to avoid. Let's talk about the foods to eat. Fermented foods. Why? Because when you eat sauerkraut, kefir, Bulgarian yogurt, you are going to build up the microbes that help you make these secondary bile salts. And these secondary bile salts are potent anti-inflammatories in your joints. Second one is healthy fats. Olive oil, avocado oil, fish oils, but also animal fats that are grass-fed are also very healthy. And so is grass-fed butter and grass-fed cheese. Number 3, anything with high amounts of vitamin D3. There's salmon, cod liver, and cod liver oil. But typically you want to get as much sun as you can, but that's not food. So then some people in the winter take it as a supplement. But when we're talking about arthritis, you're going to have to take the therapeutic dosage of vitamin D at the very minimum 60, but shoot for 70 or even 80, or sometimes even a little bit more, depending on what type of condition you have. If you have also an autoimmune problem, you need it high because that's when the magic starts happening with inflammation. Also, make sure you take vitamin K2 and magnesium to offset any problems with that. Of course, omega-3 is going to be in the fish, cod liver oil, very important. And then also the sulfur foods, onions and garlic and cruciferous vegetables, very high in sulfur because the joints like sulfur. And then, of course, just make sure you have enough collagen from bone broth, because part of that joint is collagen. And if you're just eating, regular meat like hamburger or steak, that has a small percentage of collagen. If we take a look at our body and look at how much protein we have, and then we look at how much collagen we have, we need at least 30% of that food collagen. But when you look at a steak, it's only like maybe 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5% collagen, because people like tender steaks, right? They're not consuming this grass-fed, grass-finished steak that's really hard to eat because you're chewing it all the time. But that's because of the collagen. You might have to get your collagen another way. I already talked about vitamin D, K2, magnesium. I want to just mention, keep your iron low because too much iron can create arthritis. Iron is one of those minerals that it's very hard to get out of the body once you get it in there. So like cooking with an iron skillet is not good. Taking iron supplements is not good, especially if you're not menstruating. If you're a man and you have too much iron, chances are you're going to have a lot of inflammation. And then TUDCA, I want to just mention that because that's a really good remedy for arthritis, and now you know why. It's something to help that endoplasmic reticulum stress, as well as protecting the cartilage in the joint. And because TUDCA is such a fascinating compound, if you really want to understand all the things it does, you want to see this video right here. Check it out.